We've talked about center pivots. There is one other system that is similar to a center pivot. Also, we call it a linear or a lateral, depends on the type or the company that's selling it as to what they call it. So we just call them linear laterals as a name. And a linear lateral looks exactly like a center pivot, except at the pivot point. There is no pivot point. It's a moving cart. And that cart will move down a ditch through the middle of a field, or it'll move down a main line with a hose attachment to it. And the hose might be 320 feet long, or even as long as 640 or 660 feet long, so they can go about a quarter mile at a time before they have to come out and change the location of the hose. And it's the pivot point, instead of staying stationary, anchored in one spot, it travels. And then the rest of the machine keeps even with the speed that the cart travels. That is the effective pivot point. But it's a moving pivot point. The spans look exactly alike. The towers look exactly alike. There is a slight different conveyance system on it to keep it aligned, but as far as the intermediate towers are concerned, they all run exactly the same as do center pivot intermediate towers. The nice thing about a linear lateral is that you have nice uniform watering. Every sprinkler waters at the same rate because it's moving across the field instead of around in a circle, so any given length of the lateral is watering exactly the same amount of acreage as any other length of the lateral is concerned. So what is happening, instead of having this thing going like that, this thing just moves forward. And it's continuous move. It would operate similarly to a wheel line, except it waters continuously, it non-stop. It's just continuously moving and continuously watering, which gives you extremely good uniformity. The biggest rub of this system is that when you get to the end of the field with it, do you just turn it around and go back and water exactly the same? Well, that's one option, but what's happening is your timing of watering becomes a little distorted. Say it takes 2 days to get to this point, and then you turn around and go back the other way, you're watering right over the top of what you just watered. So ideally, you run it across this way, run back dry, you know, if you have the time to do it, and start back at point A again and come back across the field. But efficiency-wise, that generally can't be done because you got to get water down quicker. Another thing that'll happen is that sometimes they'll have them and they'll walk around and go back this way, or they can stop here, turn, and walk back this way, turn inside. So this guy, instead of going straight back, it might turn over here, come down here, and then walk this way. It walks on over till it gets to this point, stops, acts like a pivot, turns around dry to here, then comes back, and we don't have any dry watering at all, and it stays within the field all the time. So that's another option that can be done with one of these units. Or they can bring them to the end of the field and keep them watering and water them around the outside perimeter, but then you got, again, once it starts making that turn, you got too much water in close and not enough out here, so that sometimes is a tough option to deal with.
What kind of main line would you be using?
Well, it would have to be big enough to carry the flow that would be operating in one of these units. So if
it's going to be moving laterally across the field, how are you going to get water to the machine all the way across the field and all the